Hey everyone, I'm Renegade Kitty, and I'm doing a speed build of a micro house for a family of 4 Sims that's also a starter house. I wanted to make this work with everything indoors, and I've seen a lot of micro homes for 3 Sims, but I thought, why not see if we can fit in another? So I'm plotting out spaces for the Murphy and double beds because I wanted to make sure there was a private bedroom and separate dining and seating areas. The walls around the double bed do clip it a little bit, but that's okay because we'll adjust it later. I'm also making a 2x2 bathroom because thanks to Simarchy's 1x1 bathroom, which I'll link below, we know we can fit a little bit more into a tinier space when it comes to bathrooms. So I'm placing the easier items down first. That way I can spend more time adjusting other things later just to make sure it all works. And I do want this to be easy for you all to move around items or swap things out if you need to. The hardest thing is going to be the table, as you'll see later. In the bathroom, the toilet and sink share a tile using Move Objects On and Alt, and the sink is scaled down once just so everything fits. It's going to be the easiest room in the house, and I'll only have to go back once just to move the sink out a little bit so that Sims will use it first after the toilet, otherwise they were using the kitchen sink. Now the bed that was cut into, we're going to bring it down just a little bit, but you'll note that part of it is still going to be in the wall. Basically it loses the headboard, but it means that Sims can walk around both sides of the bed in the tiny room. Because of that, I'm not sure how canopy beds are going to look, but you can always give it a try. I do have Sims on the lot that you'll see, so I can playtest everything as I put it down, just to make sure it all works, and once it does, I go ahead and I add in the decor and other items just to make it more homey. I do like using upper cabinets in the bedrooms in tiny homes, just because it makes sense that they would need extra storage for things like clothes, since there's no room for a closet. I usually put in windows first and then base the interior around them, but here I had to make sure that the essentials were in first just because the space is so small. In the kitchen, I'm just going to be using one corner piece and one end piece of the counter just to keep things simple. I scale down the fridge once because I think it fits in really well with smaller builds. Sims can still use it and it frees up space so that we can have a sink. Sometimes in smaller builds you have to sacrifice and choose either a kitchen or a bathroom sink, but here you do have both. And I really did want the TV unit to be in front of the couch because it makes more sense, but it caused a routing issue for the Sims, so I do end up moving it to the wall next to the couch, which still works and lets them move around without issues when the bed is down. And I've seen people put in divider curtains like this, and I use it here because I think it helps section things off and adds to the idea that kids can close it once they're sleeping. And coming up will be the table. It was the most challenging part of this build because if it was a little bit too far one way or the other, the Sims couldn't get into all the chairs or into the fridge or into the Murphy bed. So it was definitely tricky to figure out. I do put a rug underneath it just to hopefully help the placement in case you do move it. You'll easily be able to swap out chairs or a high chair without having to move the table, and it works. But if you move the entire thing or swap out the table, you'll likely have to fiddle with it again just to make sure everything's functional. So when it starts to look all nice and cozy and the Sims have enough space to do their daily routines, I go ahead and test out the garbage and I realize I have no outside bin. So I make sure I put it in there because apparently that's a big deal for a lot of people and it's really easy to forget. So it is their indoor and outdoor bin. Okay, here's where I had issues with the bed. For some reason, once I added in other things, I had to shift over the bed just a little bit. But once I shifted it, everything was fine again. Yeah, I put in the kitchen sink. That's also scaled down once, so it goes right up to the fridge. I think it looks okay, but it probably could have used another sink. But I wanted to keep things base game and tiny living, and cheap enough to make sure that it's a starter house. Oh, here I was trying to make sure that Sims could get into both sides of the Murphy bed when it was down. And it turns out that I just had to move that table again. Like I said, that table caused issues if it wasn't in just the right place. So once I got everything, it all worked fine. There's a dresser in there. And the bed doesn't have to be up so that Sims can move around. Is this where I'm testing out the routing for the garbage? At one point I start testing out the routing for the garbage and my sloppy sim just kept dropping all the trash and then he gets struck by lightning. But eventually he does clean it up. Okay, here it is. Is that it? Yeah, right over here. He's just dropping it. He gets struck by lightning. And here I'm moving out the bathroom sink just a little bit more because the sim used the kitchen sink after the bathroom. Once it's moved out a little bit, they use the correct sink after the toilet, so there's no issues there. Now that everything's working fine, I go ahead with adding in minor clutter, wallpapers, floors, and everything. I didn't want to add too much clutter just because it can really close off the space, but also because I want to leave room for you to add in your own personal touches and customize it as you would like to see inside your little houses. There can be a fine line with pre-existing clutter, and sometimes it's too much. I didn't want to make it too much. I do find it a challenge to figure out in tiny houses in The Sims what flooring and wall covers work best, because it should look stylish and nice, but at the same time, if it's too dark, I think the space can feel a little bit smaller. So you'll see me stick to lighter colors in this build, which might be a little bit boring to some of you, but if you have seen some darker tones in tiny or micro home builds, please let me know because I'd love to check it out and get some ideas. Also let me know what you think of this speed build. If the visual is going too fast, I can definitely slow it down on the next one, or if the talking is too fast. I didn't want to keep things too slow when I was testing things out and when I was building. But I also know that the idea of a speed build is to learn from it. So if I can improve and help you guys out, let me know. I'm definitely open to input since this is my first speed build. And I think here I'm just putting up the finishing touches now to help it look more like a home. I really like the cheap decor items that come with Tiny Living. They look really nice and cost less than similar base game items, which is what helps me keep this under 20,000 simoleons. I think soon we'll be going to the exterior. I'm not the best at exteriors, but I try and decorate this one just a little bit while still keeping it a starter home. Nicer decorations can bring up the cost quite a bit, so I didn't want to put in too much. Yeah, just putting some decor in the kitchen. Really just putting finishing touches. And yeah, I think this is where I go to the outdoors. So I do put in a fence here, and when they did the live stream for Tiny Living, I thought the Sim Gurus said that outdoor yards wouldn't count against the tiny home tile cap, but when I close the fence, as you'll see, it will add tiles. So I do end up using the trick of deleting one piece of fence and extending the other side to close off the gap, but it's only for the yard. The inside is 32 tiles exact, no tricks, just move objects. And I thought the white picket fence would be cute. You'll see me add gates and delete them, or you already saw that. For some reason, I kept getting blank pieces of fence, and the only way to make them appear again was to add a fence and delete it. So there is a covered section out front where I put the bench and a table. I think you can add in a barbecue or an activity table and it'll still be sheltered from the rain. I just extend out the roof to do that. I know other people use fancier methods that kind of look like, I think it's a lattice, I'm not sure what it is, but I don't know how to do that yet. I'm going to be trying to figure that out because I do think it looks really nice, and I am trying to get better at landscaping and roofing, so it might happen in other builds, but definitely not for this one. I'm just trying to keep it very basic without it looking too basic, so hopefully that translates here. Let me know what you think, and if you've got a favorite beginner landscaping or roofing video, please feel free to link them in the comments below. I've played The Sims 4 for quite a while now, but never really got in depth with building until recently, and especially now with Tiny Living. Even though we could already build tiny houses before the pack, the tile restrictions and lot bonuses just added a new layer to things and got me back into exploring building and looking up tips and tricks just to get things looking nice both inside and out. I figure at least one Sim who lives here enjoys the outdoors, so I thought of having a covered portion outside and a garden area in the back just to make use of the micro home bonus for gardening. When I added added the piece of fence in the back, you'll see the tile count go up. I guess it somehow closed it off as room. I do fix that and I show you how I'm going to do that. I'm just going to finish up the exterior landscaping by putting terrain paints. And I think the finished cost of the house, oh here I'm fixing up the yard. It was closed off as a room, as you'll see. So I just delete one piece of fence and drag the arrow from the other side to close the gap, and now it's 32 tiles. And the house is 19,990 simoleons. And now I'm going to do very short playtest and screenshots. Thank you so much for watching.